Daktari, it's good to see you and welcome again.
Thank you very much for having me.
Always an honor and a pleasure. First of all, you've had a very busy last week, and I've seen you at the Africa CEO Forum. I think that should have been the latest, and the other one was actually the Africa Forward Summit with the French president, and you're quite involved in the bank as well. I just wanted you to paint a picture for us. What are some of the driving behind these whole summits, and what are the key takeouts, especially for Kenya, East Africa as well, and the region?
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Early this last week, we had the African Forward Summit.
You're right.
And we also had the African-French Summit both in Nairobi.
Mm-hmm.
And as you rightly said, I was requested by the French government to coordinate and share the private sector and the business forum, and particularly to organize the African private sector to participate.
Yeah.
And that is why you found us quite busy. Equity was heavily involved,
right?
Because I was asked to lead the private sector because of our strong relationship with the financial sector in France, particularly Propaco, AFD, and BPI, France.
Yeah.
So that is the reason why the long-standing relationship was the bridge.
And you have been so powerful at championing the African brand in itself and speaking on a pivotal point. I wanted to ask you two questions on this. One, would you say that the global institutions are now viewing Africa differently as a strategic growth frontier?
Maybe we need to put this in perspective of the moment we are in.
Yes, sir.
In 1947, the current global development framework was set. Africa was not on the table.
It wasn't.
And so for the last 80 plus years, Africa has been the menu on the table. Nobody paid attention to Africa. It was purely extraction because African voice and interest is not represented on the table. However, the global economic framework is resetting, and we can see the pressure of geopolitics. We can see the crisis after crisis we have. We can see the patronage that the world is really going through. In the process, Africa has become more relevant than ever before. And the problem of climate change, the problem of food security, the problem of aging population in the Western world and the problem of energy transition has placed Africa squarely at the center of the table. It's occupying the seat on the table. Why? Because the solution to an aging population is the youthful population of the African continent. The transition in technology, particularly AI, require a population that is AI digital native. That is the lineage of Africa. When you look at agriculture, 62% of a utilized arable land is in Africa. So food security will not happen without Africa. When you look at energy, 65% of all the renewable energy in the world is in Africa, will not transition unless Africa plays its rightful role. And lastly is the strategic minerals. When you look at the strategic minerals, particularly the Eastern Central African region is endowed by more than 40%. So the world will not do without this resource. So consequently, Africa has become the most beautiful bride. And everybody wants to do it, whether it's Robito corridors, whether it's agreement. And as a result, if Africa organizes itself, then its voice becomes very loud. And that is why every multilateral institution is wooing Africa. Every government is wooing Africa. The question is, how does Africa negotiate for the seat on the table? And how relevant does it come? Will it have a seat in the Bretton Woods institutions? Will it have a seat in the United Nations Security Council? Will it be involved in all multilateral decision-making? And will its vote count? Will it help restructure trade and markets. That is the big question.
Yeah. Wow. I love that. You know, I can't close this moment without one significant one that I saw, that instead of the usual things that we see people toasting on, we had our tea that was brought on the table, and you have been very instrumental at championing for value addition and the farmers to ensure that they get value. Could you speak into that and whether we are seeing the fruits coming forth?
This organization was set in a tea growing zone when for 8 years it had only 3 branches, Kageva, Muraradi, and Kireini, all in a tea growing zone. It has grown on the back of the tea farmers. And time has come now to help tea farmers to unlock the value of tea. So we have really focused, and we have had significant support globally to really convert our tea from a commodity to a high premium specialty tea. And so the way we looked at it was to use the champagne concept of geographical indication of the champagne in France. And we create geographical indication of Kenyan tea and attract and unlock the premium of specialty tea. And so what we did was to really develop the raw, open the market. And I'm really glad that we have used Champagne and CILAD of France to create a GI and legal framework for Kenya through research. And in the process of getting that GI, we also thought of opening global markets. And we signed up with a French company called Validity, which is the biggest stockist and trader of specialty tea, for an offtake agreement. And so what now is left is for us to produce specialty tea. So we took advantage of the French African Summit, and we requested the President and President Macron and President Ruto to allow us to prepare premium specialty tea and replace champagne on the table. And I was glad that every cuisine of the 4 courses that was offered was matched with a different tea brand. And the objective was to attract the palate of the 300 French people who were there. We then gave them each 2 packets of tea of Kenyan tea is of the highest quality because it's high altitude tea. It's deep volcanic red soils, very well drained soils. So it has a very special place. Our black tea is ranked very high, but our specialty tea is very premium tea. So that tea that was being served at State House, each kilo, we sold it for between $60 and $100. And that essentially translates our tea. Even if it took 4 kilos of green leaf to make 1 kilo of specialty tea, it means we sold it at 3,000 shillings. Last year, I was paid at 100 shillings. Now, the farmer is going to be paid 3,000 shillings. It's a real transformation. And I'm glad I've lived to witness this moment when equity can give back to the farmer, transform Kenyan tea from a commodity to a specialty premium product that is fit for state dinners. And it's not just a state dinner, a state dinner in honor of 32 presidents in Africa and President Macron, and get him to toast with our Kenyan
our very own tea.
Our own tea. And then the issue is now, let's start the journey. The government is about to finish the regulation. The factories need to start to create lines parallel to the black tea production lines to produce specialty tea. We have the market. Validity has opened its market and have just done the first offtake.
Looking forward
to French and Europeans have tasted our tea, and they have taken the first packet. Now they will get the rest from the shops.
And buy and give us value.
And give us value.
You know, this is the season Q1, and you've just done impressive numbers. We have to get to the numbers. 19.1 billion profit after tax. And this is impressive looking back to other quarters. I don't know what are the drivers behind this and what are your sentiments about these numbers?
This is a continuing story of transforming equity. And people know that we have been going through shocks. And the question we asked ourselves, how can we make equity resilient so that when shock comes, they leave it supporting customers because it's agile enough to change. That process is now complete. And if you saw last year, our profit went up by 35%.
You're right.
If you look at this profit before tax, it's 32% up.
Yeah.
So simply, we are now reaping the benefits of transformation.
All right.
But that transformation is underpinned by technology. We're now using technology significantly, which has enhanced the productivity of our staff. It has improved the quality of our decisions. But more importantly, the adoption of digital platforms have enabled 98% of the customers to be served outside our branches. And 4% of our customers are on self-service platforms. Wow. So banking is just clicks, whatever time, wherever you are. We have compressed both distance and time for them. So we have delivered unparalleled convenience. And in the process, we have grown to 23 million customers.
Wow. I love this, and I want to just dig deeper into that, because two things you've said, and I listened to you today talk quite in detail about transformation finance institution. Simply means you're no longer just a bank. There's something else that you're doing deeply into that. You've talked about the numbers, 98.3% transactions happening outside branches and the likes. Does this signal a beginning of a radical different banking model in Africa?
It's truly the way we set ourselves from the European or Western banks when we started. We created a bank relevant to our people. We removed the barriers of banking, whether it was reg-avi, whether it was time, and all those things. We have now said, can we leapfrog on technology and build a bank that allows us to do our activities without going to banking? Can we transform ourselves from a bank where people go to what they do on their phones? And that is why over 80% of the transactions are on the digital mobile platforms. That's one. The second thing was we wanted to really facilitate trade. And we felt the Kenyan market of 60 million people was not large enough. Can we become a systemic bank in the region of 550 million people from Ethiopia to DRC, to Rwanda, to Angola, and then facilitate cross-border trade and take advantage of the East African Community protocols, the SADC protocols, to enlarge market for our people. So we have moved from being a Kenyan bank to a Pan-African bank, purely to facilitate. The second one was then work with the African Continental Free Trade Area to become a facilitator so that we can open the bottlenecks. So that is where we are really playing. But also the last one is the size of the bank. We're now nearly 2.1 trillion shillings. If you look, our capital is nearly 350 million. So we can do a single loan of $80 billion. So the SMEs that grew with us, we can now support them to do volume and to do even infrastructure, to transform our agriculture, to add value through agro-processing to our agricultural produce, to add value to our minerals. And so because we're in that market, we don't need to be the one mining, but we can buy the raw material and add value in Kenya. That is where we want to position ourselves, to catalyze, to enable our people to move to the next level in transforming Africa, in industrializing, and in creating wealth, of course.
I love that. And you know, speaking about technology, the last time we had a chat, you were quite bullish about AI and embedding AI here. In fact, I wanted to ask you, where are we so far?
Oh, we have done very well. 80% 85% of all our staff are now conversant with AI.
Oh.
We have 600 of our staff who have enrolled to the World Quantum University in the US for their master's degree in AI.
Okay.
We have 5,700 who have been trained by Huawei Labs. So, and what we have seen is that they are using these AI capabilities to enhance their product. They are becoming globally competitive. The ease of doing things using AI. And they're able to make better quality decisions, but more importantly, they're able to understand our customers.
Wow, I love this. I love this. Looking at this Q1, the Kenya Bankers Association released their research, and you were number one, and actually the closest bank that came close to you had already gone and surpassed by 3 times in terms of lending to MSMEs in this country. And we want to give you flowers to that for really supporting MSMEs. And one of the key other things that I've also observed is that you have a partnership with Propacro. I wanted you to shed some light. What is the plan for continuous support to SMEs and MSMEs?
When we were formed, by our essence and purpose was to bring to banking and resource allocation to those who had been excluded and condemned as unbankable. This number validates that we have remained true to the objective that we were set for. We take pride that 36.5% of all micro, small and medium loans disbursed in this country for the first quarter are disbursed by equity. That leader speaks. We have remained true.
Absolutely.
And to our core, and our core is our people. And that's what we are saying now. As they graduate, we want to take them to the next level. We don't want them to get stuck in micro. We want micro to graduate to small, small to medium, medium to large, because we have a capacity. And that's why we are opening the market for them. That's why we're facilitating cross-border trade. Now, the facility we signed with the Propacro is in US dollars. It's $75 million. And what we wanted to do is cross-border trade is done in dollars. We wanted to be sure our customers are borrowing affordably in the currency of trade. If you look at the tea ecosystem, and we are doing that with coffee, we are doing that with livestock, with the Italians, exactly the way we have done with the French with the tea. We're doing coffee with the Italians because they're the global leader. We want those global supply chains to be populated by our SMEs. And that is why we have got funding upfront so that they can populate those and we globalized our trade. It's good to trade in country, it's good to trade regionally, but it's better to trade globally because of the size of the market.
Wow, this is transformative. I have one more challenge as well to you, because I think on the sidelines of the Africa Forward Summit, there was a convening of manufacturers in the medical sector. And one of the key struggles they were talking about was they wanted to manufacture even locally and the likes. And you're a key supporter of this. And I'm sure if they knock your door, you will definitely be there to support them.
I think our first step is local production. And we are negotiating with all of them and saying, this is our demand. Can you do contract production for us? We give you the same, the full quantity. We're building pharmacies. We add that. What price could you give? And we have borrowed this from what happened. When I became the chair of the COVID response board.
The board,
the coverall that doctors were using was costing to 20,000 shillings. The surgical mask that all were started buying, we were buying at 800 shillings a piece. And we said, we have taken 1.7 billion shillings to do this. We will not import. We manufacture.
Let's do it.
By the end of the process, the surgical mask price came from 800 shillings to 2 shillings and 50 cents. And the coverall suit came from 20,000 to 650. Our 1.7 billion shillings became the power of negotiation. And in the process, we were able to support 116 hospitals.
Yeah.
66 government referral and county hospitals. The rest faith-based hospitals for 3 years with PPEs.
Yeah.
Simply because we had got the price right.
Wow.
That is the same methodology we are using to get pharmaceutical commodities down in price.
Okay.
Use the power of the market
to do all that. You're right. I think I want to promise our viewers that we shall have a series of more conversations, especially on the detailed work and the transformative work that equity is doing. But of course, we have to close with talking to the shareholders and any ordinary African looking at equity today. If you were to speak to them, what should they understand about the next chapter that the numbers alone may not reveal?
I think the first one is the opportunity.
Yeah.
As I said earlier on, Africa is the moment Southeast Asia was 30 years ago when it started growing, and we saw Malaysia, we saw Singapore, and all the others. And today, most of them are entering others like Singapore and have entered into the developed world.
Yeah.
It may take us another 30 years, but the journey has started.
The journey has started.
What to do is that to create an immeasurable opportunity. One, by 2050, we'll have 25% of the world population.
Yeah.
What it means, for every 4 people in the world, 1 will be living in Africa. For every 3 people who will be working, 1 will be in Africa, a third of the world working population.
Yeah.
What that will do, it will combine labor and consumption. And that is the opportunity for Africa to industrialize, because it's both the labor market and the consumer market.
Yeah.
That offers a huge opportunity for growth. And I want to say these numbers and the growth of equity is underpinning the transformation of the African continent, where scales become the most important thing.
Yeah.
We must really grow. That is my message to the shareholder.
Yeah.
And that explains why we pay them 30% of available for distribution and plow back and invest the other 70%. That's how we are able to say we can go into 4 markets at the same time.
Absolutely.
Because we are very well capital. But that should not only be the story of equity alone. It should be the story of every investor, every entrepreneur, because the market is transitioning. The second thing, we are moving from, like we saw with tea, not turning a tea into an export commodity, but a finished premium product, specialty tea. That's where the value is. If you saw the Muranga tea, the price was 30 times more than we're being paid. We need to unlock that premium value. We need to unlock that value addition value. So can we go more to agro-processing and manufacturing of minerals and stop exporting raw materials? We manufacture what we produce, and we export manufactured goods.
Dr. we need a chapter 2 and 3.
Thank you very much for having me, Mr. Mwangi.
Asante sana. That's Dr. James Mwangi, the Group MD and CEO, Equity Group. And this time round, they're talking about transformation, and this is the finance institution that will lead that transformation. And we can see it, and we want to give their flowers to them. Thank you so much for your time. I leave you now with the markets, and keep in touch for the next chapter.